For 20 years, we've been creating innovation in the CX industry, and now we're seeking out brilliant new perspectives on CX you just won't find anywhere else. I'm Richard Owen. Welcome to the CX Iconoclast. Chris Bishop is Conga's Chief Customer Officer and defines, well, for me at least, what that role should all be about. Accountable for revenue renewals, with line responsibility for professional services and customer success teams, Chris also owns the customer experience analytics, which enables him to bring the data, human, and strategic perspective into achieving Conga's customer and financial goals. I hope you enjoy our conversation.
Right. Well, Chris, thanks for joining me. Appreciate the time. Let's start talking a bit about your role within the company. So Chief Customer Officer, how do you think about that as a set of responsibilities?
I think at this moment in time, Chief Customer Officers are having a little bit of their moment in the sun, right? Revenue is more important than ever. The markets are tough. And so, working with your customer base has become critical for most enterprises. My role within Conga and as a Chief Customer Officer is to first serve as the champion for the customer, to bring their voice into the room when we're making decisions on strategy, making decisions on investment, priorities, all of those elements. We use that data at Conga to try to identify where we can help customers drive value, drive outcomes. And that in turn, we know that drives great value for us in terms of incremental opportunity with those customers. And so I really sort of feel if we think about growth, the Chief Customer Officer is part of the growth story at any company at this point in time.
But it's not just a cheerleading job. To some extent, you talk about representing and being the voice of the customer, but there's a hard set of metrics attached to this.
Oh, I wake up every day with a hard set of metrics attached to what I've got to do. We're responsible for both the leading indicators and the lagging indicators. You think about the output metric of net retention or gross retention. I own those. I'm responsible for those. When those are going well, I'm breathing easier. When I see trouble with those, I've got a CEO talking to me about what are we doing to improve. Underneath that, it's CSAT, it's NPS, those indicators. And so we wake up every day, in the customer success organizations with a real set of metrics. It's not just about shaking hands, kissing babies, and making sure you're happy. It's really about driving real business value that drives, incremental opportunity for us.
And I think that's part of the evolution of the role, because if you think back maybe 10 years or so ago, the role started emerging and it was more about championing, being a voice.
Yep.
But now it's become very associated with hard financials.
It has. And I think intuitively, we understood that championing and being the voice of the customer would lead to benefit for the company. Now we can quantify it, so the job's gotten even more demanding. The stakes are higher. And I'll go back to where we are at this point in time, with a little bit of retraction in the economy, your customers are your primary source of keeping and driving revenue. And so the Chief Customer Officer is having the moment in the sun, the spotlight, whichever analogy you want to use. And so it's a great time if you like to play a high-stakes game.
Yeah, so in some ways, in a tougher economy, companies shift from a focus on they kind of acquire their way out of the problem, right? So naturally, the customer base becomes a bit more of a target. And that sounds like that's been the story at Conga.
It's absolutely been the story at Conga, right. So look, we have very aggressive growth ambitions for the company. And new logo acquisition is important to us, but we can't be losing customers at the same rate. And we actually think that we should be growing the footprint within most of our customer base. And in fact, we are, given the value we're providing in driving their revenue operations.
And you find that upsell and cross-sell is a more effective growth financially than acquisition. Has that been your experience?
Well, absolutely, right? So it's cheaper to keep a customer, it's cheaper to grow a customer than it is to put the effort in to go find a new customer. So new logo acquisition, look, every company needs new logo acquisition to grow. But the companies that are learning how to maximize the impact they're having with their customers are, almost doubling down or oversizing or creating greater impact within their own organization.
At the highest level of the company, one of the company values is championing the customer.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you translate that idea, which sounds great, it's a good soundbite,
Yep.
How does that translate into practical ways you can impact the company?
Yeah, look, almost any company you look at is going to have some form of their mission around it, champion the customer, or, we love our customers, whatever that's going to be. It's real at Conga. The first thing is it's real in terms of every person at this company, every Conganeer has some form of their compensation tied to the idea of customer success. So that's very real for every colleague. The opportunity, though, is for us to, within the organization, connect the dots so you understand, if I'm on finance, how am I actually impacting the customer? And so we spend an inordinate amount of time connecting those dots and saying, look, part of our strategy at this company is our growth flywheel is very dependent on customer growth. And I always tell the company, almost every all hands, happy customers do three things. They refer, they renew, and they buy more software. So let's focus on keeping our customers happy. And we can, by the way, measure all of that. And so every activity in the company ladders up to some or one of our objectives, many of them right into that idea of driving growth to our customers. So we measure it and we pay on it. And the last thing we do, so let me add this point is we celebrate it. We do a lot of work within the company to celebrate when we're successful with a customer, whether that's an initial implementation in a go live, whether that's a new use case we've unlocked for a customer. We celebrate that. And every month we have one individual that wins a really cool jacket. We call it the CX champion. And we celebrate the individuals that are demonstrating our core value of championing the customer and the attributes of simple, helpful, and caring, which are, sort of our core principles around delivering experiences for our customers.
Yeah, it sounds like it's kind of like the green jacket at the golf, right?
So, it is. It's a little cooler than that. I probably should have worn it in, but I'm sure we've got one around somewhere. But we try to do that because I don't want customer success to be a once a quarter thing I talk about on a stage. I want it to be part of what we do every day. And so we look for opportunities to celebrate those moments.
And there's a real risk that customer focus becomes entirely negative, right? You're going to lose customers.
Right.
There's a natural tendency for companies to say, why did that happen? Which is a legitimate question, can very quickly turn into a blame game or create a climate of negativity. So it seems really important to focus on what goes right all the time, right? And find examples of people doing the right thing, put them up on stage and make a customer initiative seem entirely positive.
Yep. Absolutely. And that's actually what we're trying to do with this celebration through the Champion the Customer program. We're highlighting these individuals and trying to demonstrate and bring to life those stories where somebody's done something really, amazing beyond sort of the normal course of action. We've got one really, really cool story where we had an individual over in Asia Pac. He was on vacation. He heard about one of his key customers was in trouble. They happened to be in the Philippines. And so during his vacation, happened to book a flight, jump over, and actually saved the account for us. The account was going red. And just by this individual showing up at their doorstep, going out of the way on their vacation to solve this issue, created a pretty impactful statement of who we are as a company for that customer.
How do you avoid the challenge where heroics aren't really what you want, though, right? At some level, we want to recognize people doing heroic things, but we want to emphasize that heroics aren't the answer.
Yeah, well, exactly. I think you and I had a conversation one time where you said, look, you guys got a lot of great firefighters. Maybe we should start talking about how not to start fires and get into fire prevention. And so we have to, really understand how those issues are being ignited with our customers. And we spent a lot of time over the last couple of years identifying where those fail points were that were creating those issues, and then trying to, through people, through process, through better attention, try to understand how do we actually prevent those from starting in the first place. And we've got examples across the organization where we've either added technology or we've re-engineered a process, or we've just doubled down on sort of the people in the process to make sure that we're preventing some of those fires as we've talked about.
Which is probably a good segue to talk about data and analytics, because Conga is increasingly a highly analytically capable company, right? And that's a very deliberate choice you've made. You've invested significantly in becoming data-driven.
Yeah.
And it's a scale of business that lends itself to data-driven, but it's not necessarily natural.
Right.
So perhaps you could talk about that journey a little bit.
Yeah. So look, I've been here almost 5 years. And when I walked in, I had a really difficult time understanding where the problem was. I knew we had problems. It was clear. We were hearing about that. But there was no pattern for us to really identify to say, look, these are the 3 things that need to be worked on, or this is the one silver bullet. It was not apparent to me that there was one. In fact, there really, probably wasn't one thing. Add to that an acquisition that took our customer base up to over 12,000 customers. And as you mentioned, we have a lot of data, but there's a lot of noise there. And so analytics is providing us the opportunity to look for patterns. To identify patterns. And that pattern recognition then becomes very helpful to us in determining where we want to spend time to solve some of these issues, right? Now, I'll use technical support as a primary example. Through the use of analytics, we were able to identify not just that we had a problem in support. We knew that, right? You could read the surveys and understand something is not working as expected from a customer perspective. But it was really hard to identify what that was. Through analytics, we were able to look and see a pattern evolving of consistent themes, consistent time to resolution, consistent quality. And so we were able to develop 3 key themes in our technical support organization that over the past 18 months, we've been laser focused on those. And the results have been dramatic. The improvement in that area is probably one of the most dramatic turnarounds I've seen in terms of an organization that really, I don't want to say was a weakness for the organization, but certainly wasn't a strength. And now really is something we celebrate and talk about and differentiates us from our competition.
For people watching this video, they may not be that familiar with Conga. Obviously, your customers are. But for people who aren't your customers, what does Conga do?
So Conga is in the business of revenue lifecycle management. We are the leaders in this category. In fact, we've defined this as a category. Anybody in business understands the importance of revenue. It is literally the lifeblood of any enterprise. Any executive is looking at revenue on a daily basis. Today, more than ever, the focus on revenue isn't just about binary, am I making it or not? It's about predictability of revenue. It's about control of that revenue, control of the discounting. It's about identifying risks to that revenue. And it's also about driving velocity. Our Conga revenue lifecycle platform is uniquely built to help solve those issues. It's taking what has traditionally been a disparate set of processes and technologies, putting them onto one unified data model and helping drive speed, helping drive accuracy, helping identify risk, all to drive more accurate, healthy revenue success for our customers. That's what we do.
And for context, the company is now privately owned by private equity.
We are.
And it's also been formed through some M&A activity as well. So you've had to combine product lines and business models into a single new company, which is quite at scale.
Correct. So Conga is the combination of a couple different companies that had solutions that we've put together on this idea of a unified platform to bring together the entire revenue lifecycle. So in their previous lives, these companies had parts of the solution, but the combination of Conga with what was known as Aptus really brings us the ability to do this in a unified way that's really unique in the marketplace.
And I would imagine also comes with a lot of high expectations for financial performance, growth. I mean, typically companies in your position are expected to do both, right? Be efficient, grow profitably.
Yeah. From the beginning, our mission has been profitable growth, right? So we've not been a growth at all cost organization, nor have we been run to just be a profit maximization machine. So there's very much a balance that our ownership and investor teams have brought to us. That hasn't always been in fashion, but I would tell you that's always been part of our core mission and DNA. Very fashionable, as you know now. But those expectations are hard, right? Because it means you need to be very pragmatic and thoughtful in your investment decisions, because every decision needs to drive growth, but also needs to lead to profitability. And that's not always the easiest thing for a management team to do.
Conga was one of the earliest adopters of customer AI-based technology, predictive analytics technology. Yeah. What was it that you saw in that encouraged you to dive in for something that was a couple of years ago, quite embryonic?
Yeah. Candidly, necessity. We mentioned before that we make decisions with a fairly tight lens here at Conga, the idea of decisions have to lead to profitable growth. I just didn't have a lot of resources at my fingertips, but I had a fairly significant set of challenges in my customer base. I just couldn't see them all, but I knew they were there and they were just coming out of the woodwork at me. So I needed some help initially to help really identify things that I wasn't seeing. It was a very reactive position. But I also knew as we grew the company, we weren't going to be able to scale in line or grow in line with our top line growth. And so I needed to be able to be more predictive. I needed customer intelligence to be at my fingertips. And so the idea of working with OCX Cognition and a customer AI solution was the idea to move from a reactive to a predictive position where I could begin to really have the data tell me where the challenges were going to be. And now we're moving into a position where are the opportunities? It really started as a fire suppression opportunity and really now is an ignition switch for us for growth, or will be. We're meeting with our colleagues across the company to show them the power of the data that we have. And you can see the light bulbs just popping off about, wow, we can really, for example, build targeted marketing campaigns to customers that we think are ready to take the next step based on what this predictive analytics engine is telling us.
So when we imagine, a year or two further down the road, how do you see that in terms of your aspiration for how you think this data could change the way the company operates?
Well, I think it becomes core to our investment thesis. As we talk about markets we want to be into, as we talk about sales plays that we want to run, as we talk about where opportunities are in the base, I think this becomes sort of the central set of data or intelligence that allows and guides our decision making. And so I think my vision is for this to move beyond just a tool that we use to predict happy, sad with the customer base, and really becomes an opportunity for us to forecast the business and to predict revenue for the business.
We were talking yesterday about change management, which I think is a really interesting topic here.
Yeah.
As you start to introduce data to employees who are used to making decisions based on limited data or gut feel, it seems like there's going to be a need to sort of shift the way people think about using data to do their day-to-day jobs.
Absolutely. And we're on that journey right now at Conga. We just launched a business intelligence and insights group within the company to help us with that. Because candidly, for a lot of folks, that's not their natural motion, right? But again, we want to use data because we have limited resources to really inform where to go to, where the opportunities are. And so we're building a team within the company to help serve as a center of excellence for the rest of the organization, to answer the questions they have, and maybe to actually prompt questions they haven't even thought about yet.
It's interesting you say that because I think that a lot of the challenges are people don't know what questions to ask.
Right.
They're not familiar with data-rich environments. And so in some ways, we're having to generate new ideas that just previously didn't exist because the data didn't exist.
That's correct. And look, this is where I think it gets really exciting, or the opportunity for us is we're starting to see signal, not just, hey, red, yellow, problem here, opportunity here, but then underneath that, why, and what can I do? What should I be thinking about? That's where it gets really helpful to take this rather large customer base we have, to take I think we're up to over 100 different customer variables that we're pumping into the system, and then to use those to help inform our colleagues on what to do at an account level.
And because the nature of the business is pretty typical, right? You've got concentration of businesses in very large accounts where in order to get action, we're going to be doing that through power assisting humans at the end of the day. Right?
Correct. Yeah.
At the other end of the spectrum, we've got a long tail, which has to be automation, right? There's no other way to solve that.
Yep. In some ways, the top end of the market's a little bit easier, right? Because we have intimacy with those customers, right? We meet with them frequently. We have assigned people to those accounts. But as we move into, I think, what we've called the long tail of the business, we move more and more to digital experiences being the method in which we interact and service those customers, right? And so we don't have somebody in between the customer interpreting and reading that. And that's where analytics can become really, really important and critical for us, because it's going to signal to us and give us opportunities to identify things that we won't, simply because we don't have a human attached to working with that particular account.
And we talked earlier about the importance of efficiency in a business that is driven by customer growth. And efficiency at the end of the day is about choices, right? Finite resources. And so do you see these types of analytics and customer AI in particular as being tool sets that enable you to make smarter choices on where the resources go, leading to hopefully more efficient outcomes?
Without a doubt. Look, in a perfect world, we'd have unlimited resources and we'd go chase it all. It's really hard for executives.
I'd like to live in that world.
Yeah, I would too. And it's really hard for executives to look at what they know are opportunities to make choices, right? I think, very simply put, predictive analytics allows us to make a few more choices, right? It increases our ability to invest. We can take hard dollars here and we can use predictive analytics or to drive some digital experience in maybe another area that we would traditionally maybe not identify as an opportunity or maybe not be able to invest in, because now we're more efficient as an organization.
And looking around corners seems particularly important, because we know that from the dynamic of retaining accounts, by the time you see it sort of flash red, either the cost is prohibitive to fix or it's too late anyway.
Right.
So to some extent, any business needs to lift its eyes to the horizon a little bit and start to figure out, what am I going to do that's going to impact events a year from now?
Correct. Think about this challenge. So we've got 11,000 some accounts. Many of them are renewing on an annual basis. And so a lot of our focus is just in that renewal motion. So we're working on a set of accounts. We walk into the cohort window and we're like, hey, I've got a couple challenging accounts here. Well, by the time we've recognized that, it's almost too late, right? Analytics provides us an opportunity to say, tell me about the customers renewing 360 days from now or 240 days from now, whatever horizon we want to set. Tell me what those opportunities look like. Tell me what's their propensity look like to renew. I should start working today on maybe addressing and tackling some of those challenges. But it's not, and look, that's a big use case for us. But to me, it's not just about protection of revenue. It's also starting to signal where growth is, where expansion is. These accounts are now expansion ready. Hey, let's get the account team more engaged here. Again, we can't be engaged in every account every day, but we can certainly start to predict where accounts are ready for more engagement and start to amp up the volume from a marketing standpoint, readying that account, and then eventually bringing the human team into the picture.
But all of that comes from time shifting, bringing future events into the present.
Correct.
Because we know that's more cost effective.
Yep.
And the last thing any business wants to do is throwing resource at a sort of circling the drain type of activity when it's really, really hard to recover customers. And so that's really ultimately the power of all of these predictive technologies, is to bring the future into the present so you can make smarter short-term decisions.
That's right.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the employee connection to all of this. I know at Conga, incentives are linked to customer as well, but one of the corporate values is achieving together.
Correct.
Perhaps you could talk about what that means.
Yeah. So let me take a step back for a minute and tell you why that, our value, what we call the Conga Way, is so important to us. I mentioned that, Conga today is really two companies that came together during COVID, almost coinciding with the advent of COVID. So, we're going to take two companies, two very distinct cultures, bring them together, and we're going to do this all remotely. You can imagine the challenges. And so it became really important as we thought about how are we going to bring the company together to redefine a set of cultural values that the entire company could embrace, both teams could really identify with. And after a lot of time thinking about who we are and who we want to be, we landed on the idea of what we today call the Conga Way, which is achieve together, entrepreneurial spirit, and champion the customer. And really that has become something we lead with in almost every conversation with our colleagues and with our customers. We want to be clear about who we are, how we show up every day. And so, that's a critical, almost totem within the company that has become very important. And all of our colleagues, I can tell you, have truly, truly embraced that. The idea of championing the customer is really easy. We've talked about that. It's critically important. All of them, though, have equal importance. And you asked about achieve together. Yeah, so the idea of achieve together is equally important in driving customer success as champion the customer. At Conga, we're using a pretty well-known formula of customer success as being the combination of both outcomes and experience. Achieve together means every individual needs to understand how they deliver an experience or unlock an outcome. Whether you're in finance and that's how you treat a customer during a collection process, or whether that's being acutely aware of engineering of the impact of how your product is being used in the field, and when there's a challenge, working with the colleagues that are tip of spear or front of customer to solve that issue. So Achieve Together is really about not departmental goals, but aligning at the top level with those company goals. And we see it across the company every day. And similar to Champion the Customer, we try to identify opportunities to achieve together, where teams come together to identify opportunities, whether that's innovation we're going to put in front of a customer, or whether that's, actually driving an outcome for a customer.
I mean, I think it strikes most people as extraordinarily difficult to bring two different companies together to start with. As you said, doing it at a time when all the sort of natural instinct is, let's put everyone in a room, let's socialize, let's do all the important things, and you can't do any of that.
Yeah.
And so the executive team comes up with these fundamental value sets. As a practical matter, obviously there's walking the talk all the time, but how do you reinforce that across the company on a regular basis and make it real for employees?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is being incredibly consistent about who we are in the Conga Way. I would tell you could walk around this office and talk to an employee or a colleague that's been here for 5 years or 5 days and ask them about the Conga Way, and they'll be able to tell you about what that means to them and how it actually practically applies to what they do. And I'm so confident saying that and challenging you to do that because almost every interaction we have with our colleagues begins with a reinforcement of the Conga Way. Every all hands, and we do them monthly here. Even though we're a fairly large company, every month we get together to align on our strategic objectives. But before we start with that, we start with the Conga Way. And then we celebrate those moments. I mean, we're really, really big into the idea of celebration and as a way to highlight the things that we hold dear at Conga. I think there's an saying, you are what you measure. I had an opportunity once to spend some time with Frank Blank, who is the former chairman and CEO of Home Depot. And I think he's now chairman of Delta Airlines. And I asked Frank, one of those eager questions, about your management principles. And he said, look, one of the things I hold dearly is you tell me what you celebrate and I can tell you who you are. And, that really struck me. And it struck the management team. And we really do try to celebrate those achievements, whether it's achieved together or entrepreneurial spirit or champion the customer.
That's a really memorable way of framing it. I was always taught myself that it's the family rules, right?
Yeah.
They're not necessarily written down. They might be, but what are the family rules at the dinner table? And everyone knows what they are.
Yeah.
And that's really how companies behave.
Yeah.
And it sounds to me like the Conga leadership team has worked very hard to establish a set of family rules here around the values, and people operate by that.
Yeah.
And so, it becomes self-reinforcing across the whole company, ideally.
It absolutely does. Noel Goggin, our CEO, believes deeply that culture is really the foundation that we're going to build this company on. And so from day one, he's been very firm in his position that we are going to set the family rules. We call that the Conga Way. We're going to live by that. We're going to model that as a leadership team, and we're going to expect it of everybody in the organization. And I can provide you plenty of examples where we can be in a meeting having a discussion, and we might slide out of bounds a little bit on one of those principles, and somebody will say, well, that doesn't feel very achieved together. And it's a real great checkpoint to say, you may be right. Let's rethink the problem or rethink our position on something.
Thanks for listening to the CX Iconoclasts from OCX Cognition. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you won't miss any of our thought-provoking conversations. And please get in touch if you want to learn more about what OCX Cognition's predictive CX analytics platform can do for your business by providing complete insights into every account, continuously updated and connected to operations. You'll find contact info in the show notes.